Russian forces quietly amass troops for a renewed offensive in Zaporizhzhia. Ukraine has already begun dismantling the operation before it can even begin. Through a relentless campaign of targeted airstrikes, Ukrainian forces are systematically striking the backbone of Russia's preparations, according to RFU news media outlet. Russian operational objectives are clear and well defined: capturing the settlements of Orikhiv and Huliaipole. Securing Orikhiv would push the front line close enough to Zaporizhzhia city to threaten it with artillery and long-range FPV drones with fiber-optic guidance. This could potentially expose the major urban center of 700,000 residents to constant Russian bombardment, thus severely disrupting Ukrainian logistics and civilian life. Capturing Huliaipole, on the other hand, would provide Russia with a stable operational base, facilitating a northern push toward the Dnipro region and creating another axis of pressure. Nevertheless, despite these tactical ambitions, any larger Russian aspiration of taking Zaporizhzhia city remains extremely unrealistic. RFU News says, capturing such a densely populated and large city successfully would require hundreds of thousands of troops, as they would face multiple entrenched Ukrainian defense lines to even reach it in the first place. Aware of Russia's intent, Ukraine is proactively launching comprehensive air operations aimed at dismantling Russian preparations. Ukrainian forces systematically target critical Russian command posts, ammunition storages, drone control centers, and troop concentrations, seeking to cripple logistical and operational capabilities ahead of a potential offensive. First in these efforts is Ukraine's strategic targeting of Russian railway logistics, the backbone of Russia's military operations. Near Tokmak, Ukrainian FPV drones disrupted Russian rail logistics in two significant incidents. Secondly, Ukrainian airstrikes intensively target Russian command infrastructure, RFU News says. Finally, Ukraine systematically targets enemy ammunition and fuel depots. Near Novozlatopil village, a significant strike involving 2 bombs destroyed an entire hangar filled with Russian ammunition, fuel supplies, and even drone operators, indicating the depot likely sustained Russian drone operations. Similarly, near Shyroke village, another hammer-guided munition annihilated a critical ammunition depot, reportedly eliminating several Russian personnel in the explosion. Ukrainian air power is especially active here because conditions are relatively favorable, as Zaporizhzhia is far from Russia's mainland airspace. RFU News reports intensive Ukrainian strikes on Russian air defenses, both locally and in adjacent Crimea, have notably degraded enemy air defense capabilities.
Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Navy, former commander of the 155th Separate Marine Brigade, hero of Russia Major General Mikhail Gudkov died in the Kursk region. This was reported on his Telegram channel by the governor of Primorsky Krai Oleg Katsymyako. The head of the region added that Mikhail Gudkov died while performing his duty as an officer together with his fellow soldiers. Katsymyako personally knew the general, noting that he was a strong-willed warrior. At the same time, having become Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Navy, Gudkov did not stop visiting the Marines' positions. According to the governor, his loyal comrade officer Nariman Shikalev died along with Gudkov. According to AIF Primorai, the officers were killed in a missile attack by the Ukrainian armed forces on the field headquarters on July 1. The Russian Defense Ministry has not yet officially confirmed this information. Until the spring of 2025, Gudkov was the commander of the 155th Marine Brigade of the Pacific Fleet of the Russian Federation, responsible, in particular, for the massacre in Bucha. Gudkov had received awards for bravery in military action against Ukraine and been accused by Kiev of war crimes. Russian President Vladimir Putin appointed him Deputy Commander-in-Chief of the Navy in March, according to a statement on the Kremlin's website. Gudkov had led a Marine brigade of Russia's Pacific Fleet, which had been fighting in Kursk. Parts of Kursk were seized by Ukrainian forces in a surprise offensive in August 2024 before Russia said earlier this year it had driven them out. The news of the death comes after Ukraine summoned the acting U.S. envoy to Kiev to warn the Trump administration that any delay or procrastination in supplying the war-hit nation with weapons will only benefit Russia. The U.S. has blocked a number of planned shipments to Ukraine that included Patriot air defense missiles and precision-guided artillery, warning that its own domestic stockpiles were running low but said that robust options for Kiev were still lined up. Ukraine has complained that this pause in military aid has allowed Russian forces to advance further inside Ukrainian territory.
As reported recently, drones of the Security Service of Ukraine successfully attacked the Kirovsk airfield in annexed Crimea, which has been part of the flight test center since the Soviet period. During Russia's war against Ukraine, helicopters were transferred here from the Zankoi airfield, and recently concrete shelters for aircraft began to be built at the Kirovsk airfield, which indicates serious intentions to use it. Recall drones operated by the Security Service of Ukraine destroyed Mi-8, Mi-26 and Mi-28 attack helicopters and a Pantsir S-1 self-propelled anti-aircraft missile and gun system at the Kirovsk airfield. NASA firm's satellites recorded multiple fires in the western and eastern parts of the airfield, as well as near the runway in areas where aircraft are parked. After the fire, satellite images recorded traces of burns on the ground over an area of about 1 square kilometer. The Kirovsk airfield was built after World War II and was used as a base for fighter aircraft. Since 1961, aircraft testing has been conducted here, after the fighter regiment was disbanded in 1979. The airfield was completely transferred to the 3rd Scientific Testing Directorate of the State Research Institute of the Air Force, the Flight Testing Service for Anti-Submarine Defense Aviation Systems. The 3rd Directorate included, among other things, the Meganom and Chowder testing grounds. Tests of the Navy's aviation equipment were conducted, as well as tests of all aviation rescue systems, including parachute systems of decent spacecraft. The airfield was allocated a testing ground in the Black Sea near Cape Chowder and Feodosia Bay for testing anti-submarine systems. In February 1992, the Directorate came under the jurisdiction of Ukraine, and the 168th Flight Test Complex of the Ukrainian Air Force was formed on its base. After the annexation of Crimea, the airfield is subordinate to the State Flight Test Center of the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, named after Chkalov. The Russian military began using the Kirovskoy immediately after the capture of Crimea. The Kirovsk airfield has a concrete strip 3 kilometers long and 54 meters wide, as well as a reserve dirt strip 2.2 kilometers long. It runs parallel to the main one. These parameters correspond to a first-class airfield. Such a strip can be used by almost all Russian fighter bombers and attack aircraft, as well as military transport aircraft. The Russian Federation used the Kirovskoy airfield, among other things, to practice elements of a full-scale invasion of Ukraine. During the first 2 years of the full-scale war, nothing is known about the use of the Kirovsk airfield. In April 2024, after the Ukrainian armed forces successfully struck the Zankoi airfield, some of the helicopters from there were transferred to the Kirovsk airfield. In June of this year, OSINT analyst Def Mon wrote on the social network X that Russia had begun constructing shelters for aircraft at airfields in Crimea, including the Kirovsk airfield. The reserve lieutenant colonel of the Ukrainian armed forces then commented to Krim.Reli that Ukraine has a sufficient arsenal of weapons to destroy not only light hangars at Crimean airfields, but also concrete structures designed to protect military aircraft and helicopters. The subsequent attack on the airfield proved that this was indeed the case. The Ukrainian strike may have destroyed plans to use this airfield or postpone them indefinitely. Now the airfield is temporarily unprotected and its infrastructure is partially destroyed.